Sigmund Freud, the founding father of psychoanalysis. Sigismund, later changed to Sigmund Freud, was born to a middle-class family on May 6, 1856 in Freiburg, Moravia, now Pribor in the Czech Republic. His father, Jakob Freud, was a Jewish wool merchant. The family moved to Leipzig, Germany and then settled in Vienna, Austria, the town where he would live and work for most of the remainder of his life. In 1873, Freud graduated from Leopoldstädter Kommunalrealgymnasium, a high school in Vienna, Austria. He was apparently inspired by a public reading of an essay by Johann Wolfgang Goethe on nature, so he decided to take up medicine at the University of Vienna at the age of 17. Freud once studied the sex life of eels. While enrolled at the University of Vienna, young Freud studied zoology. On a research trip to Trieste to study the sexual organs of eels, specifically the males, he spent 4 weeks dissecting eels to no avail. After graduating in 1882, he worked at the Vienna General Hospital. Here marked a turning point in the career of the young neuropathologist. Freud became greatly influenced by his friend and Viennese colleague, Joseph Boyer, who had been treating a patient named Bertha Pappenheim by hypnosis and helping her recall forgotten memories of traumatic events. As soon as she had the opportunity to make these unconscious thoughts conscious, her paralysis disappeared. Breuer discussed the case with his friend Freud. Out of these discussions came the germ of an idea that Freud was to pursue for the rest of his life. In 1885, Freud went to Paris on a 3-month fellowship to study with Jean-Martin Charcot, a renowned neurologist who was conducting scientific research into hypnosis. He was later to recall the experience of this stay as catalytic in turning him toward the practice of medical psychopathology and away from a less financially promising career in neurology research. At this time, he also developed an interest in the pharmaceutical benefits of cocaine. Freud once thought that cocaine was a miracle drug. He once gave cocaine to his close friend Ernst von Fleschl-Marxow to wean him off morphine addiction, but instead, he developed a cocaine addiction. In 1886, Freud set up in private practice, specializing in nervous and brain disorders, and began using hypnosis in his clinical work. The same year he married Martha Bernays, with whom he had 6 children. The inconsistent results of Freud's early clinical work eventually led him to abandon hypnosis and move to encouraging patients to talk freely, without censorship or inhibition, about whatever ideas or memories occurred to them. Initially, he called this method free association, but by 1896, he started using the term psychoanalysis. Freud's works, Studies on Hysteria, 1895. Studies on Hysteria, or Studien über Hysterie, was co-authored by Freud and his colleague Joseph Breuer. The book described their work and study of a number of individuals suffering from hysteria, including one of their most famous cases, a young woman known as Anna O. The book also introduced the use of psychoanalysis as a treatment for mental illness. Psychoanalytic theory. Freud developed the psychoanalytic theory of personality development, which argued that personality is formed through conflicts among 3 fundamental structures of the human mind: the id, ego, and superego. Id. Freud assumed the id operated at an unconscious level according to the pleasure principle, gratification from satisfying basic instincts. The id comprises 2 kinds of biological instincts, or drives, which Freud called eros and thanatos. Ego. The ego develops from the id during infancy. The ego's goal is to satisfy the demands of the id in a safe and socially acceptable way. In contrast to the id, the ego follows the reality principle as it operates in both the conscious and unconscious mind. Superego. The superego develops during early childhood, when the child identifies with the same-sex parent, and is responsible for ensuring moral standards are followed. The superego operates on the morality principle and motivates us to behave in a socially responsible and acceptable manner. The 3 levels of mind. In Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality, he developed a topographical model of the mind, whereby he described the features of the mind's structure and function. Freud used the analogy of an iceberg to describe the 3 levels of the mind. The conscious, the small amount of mental activity we know about. It consists of those thoughts that are the focus of our attention now, and this is seen as the tip of the iceberg. The subconscious, things we could be aware of if we wanted or tried. It consists of all which can be retrieved from memory. The unconscious, things we are unaware of and cannot become aware of. Acts as a repository, a cauldron, of primitive wishes and impulse kept at bay and mediated by the preconscious area. The unconscious mind contains our biologically based instincts, eros and thanatos, for the primitive urges for sex and aggression. Freud's psychosexual stages of development. Freud believed that personality developed through a series of childhood stages in which the pleasure-seeking energies of the id become focused on certain erogenous areas. An erogenous zone is characterized as an area of the body that is particularly sensitive to stimulation. Oral, infant achieve gratification through oral activities such as feeding, thumb-sucking, and babbling. Anal, the child learns to respond to same of the demands of society, such as bowel and bladder control. Phallic, the child learns to realize the differences between males and females and becomes aware of sexuality. Latency, the child continues his or her development but sexual urges are relatively quiet. Genital, the growing adolescent shakes off old dependencies and learns to deal maturely with the opposite sex. Other major works: The Interpretation of Dreams, 1900. The Interpretation of Dreams was originally published in German under the title Die Traumdeutung. Freud often identified this book as his personal favorite, and it has gone on to become a perennial classic in the history of psychology. The book lays out Freud's theory that dreams represent unconscious wishes disguised by symbolism. The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, 1901. The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, or Zur Psychopathologie des Alltagslebens, is considered one of the major texts that outline Freud's psychoanalytic theory. The book takes a closer look at a number of deviations that occur during everyday life, including forgetting names, slips of the tongue, aka Freudian slips, and errors in speech and concealed memories. He then analyzes the underlying psychopathology that he believed led to such errors. 3 Essays on the Theory of Sexuality, 1905. 3 Essays on the Theory of Sexuality, or Drei Abhandlungen zur Sexualtheorie, is considered one of Freud's most important works. In these essays, he outlines his theory of psychosexual development and introduces other important concepts including the Oedipus complex, penis envy, and castration anxiety. Jokes and Their Relation to the Unconscious, 1905. In Jokes and Their Relation to the Unconscious, or Der Witz und seine Beziehung zum Unbewussten, Freud observed how jokes, much like dreams, could be related to unconscious wishes, desires, or memories. Freud's theory of humor is based on his theory of the id, ego, and superego. According to Freud, the superego is what allows the ego to generate and express humor. Totem and Taboo, 1913. Totem and Taboo, resemblances between the mental lives of savages and neurotics, or Totem und Tabu, einige Übereinstimmungen im Seelenleben der Wilden und der Neurotiker, is a collection of 4 essays that apply psychoanalysis to other fields including religion, anthropology, and archaeology. Beyond the Pleasure Principle, 1920. In Beyond the Pleasure Principle, originally published in German as Jenseits des Lustprinzips, Freud explored his theory of instincts in greater depth. Previously, Freud's work identified the libido as the force behind human actions. In this book, he developed a theory of drives that are motivated by the life and death instincts. Civilization and Its Discontents, 1930. Civilization and Its Discontents, or Das Unbehagen in der Kultur, is one of Freud's best-known as most widely read books. The book centers on Freud's ideas about the tension between the individual and civilization as a whole. According to Freud, many of our most basic desires are at odds with what is best for society, which is why laws prohibiting certain actions are created. The result, he argues, is an ongoing feeling of discontentment among the citizens of that civilization. Sigmund Freud died on September 23, 1939. He was diagnosed with jaw cancer in 1923, being a heavy cigar smoker. Freud had already received more than 30 surgeries for this, but when his cancer returned, His doctor informed him that the cancer was incurable. When talking grew increasingly painful for him, he recorded a message for the British Broadcasting Company.
I started my professional activity as a neurologist, trying to bring relief to my neurotic patients. Under the influence of an older friend and by my own efforts, I discovered some important new facts about the unconscious in psychic life, the role of instinctual urges, and so on. Out of these findings grew a new science, psychoanalysis, a part of psychology, as a new method of treatment of the neurosis. I had to pay heavily for this bit of good luck. People did not believe in my facts and thought my theories unsavory. Resistance was strong and unrelenting. In the end, I succeeded in acquiring pupils and building up an international psychoanalytic association. But the struggle is not yet over. Sigmund Freud.
And months later he requested that his doctor deliver a fatal dose of morphine to him, killing him 2 days later.